Hello. We're very privileged to have with us today Bruce Robertson, author of this book, The Pattern Paradigm, The Science of Philosophy. So Bruce, thanks for coming to talk to us today. Why did you write this book?
Well, I've been interested in philosophy for a long time. I think it's really important to understand what it is that the world is. And when I was at university, I really wanted to understand philosophy, and I couldn't. People said to me, well, read this book by Tractatus by Wittgenstein. So I read it through and I thought, that doesn't say anything about anything. I had to go back to the pre-Socratic philosophers before I could find philosophers that made sense to me. But then there's an awful lot to do that is beyond what they were talking about. And so I felt I had to work on my own book. And that's what I've been doing for roughly 40 years. And the book I've written is basically the book I would have liked to have read when I was 20 years old at university. It is that sort of book.
So what is the pattern paradigm?
It's taking a particular part of philosophy, which is called epistemology, which is basically the study of how we know, what knowledge is. How do we know anything at all? And it studies and looks at that, and its main thesis is that it's all based on pattern creation. Both science and the human brain work from analysing sense data. You take some sense data and you analyse it and you simplify it and you create a pattern from it. And so in that respect, the way science works and the way the pattern paradigm works are highly similar. And it's quite distinct from the way other philosophers work, which they say, well, look, this is a true thing here, and we're going to make inferences and end up with something else that's true over here. The problem with that is that you've got no basis for it. It's just up in the air. It's got no foundation is their basic problem, and they don't realise that. And that's what the book does. It's basically in two parts. The first part explains the pattern paradigm, how patterns are built up from base sense data, how you have a hierarchy of patterns, you can make patterns of patterns, and how all this works and is put together. And then the second half, I'm looking at what I call the status quo of philosophy today, what you're taught at universities, and exposes flaws within that, takes various different ideas from lots of different philosophers, and just points out to them why they have to be able to fit in with the pattern paradigm, because that is the way that we do think. And using the pattern paradigm, we have very firm foundations, whereas the others do not have firm foundations at all. It's just hypothetical. And I'm using, admittedly, the paradigm of the pattern paradigm to explain what is wrong with the status quo paradigm. I mean, I suppose it does presuppose evolution, but I mean, when it's quite funny in that respect, because from all the patterns we create, we imagine that evolution happens. And then I use that concept of evolution to explain how patterns are built up from the very basic idea of an animal organism, and how that can then be expanded out into the very complex brain that we humans have.
So does the pattern paradigm help to explain confirmation bias?
Well, confirmation bias being that you get a certain ideas and then you get fixed in those ideas, and you look at new data and they either fit in with your ideas or you ignore it. That's confirmation bias, basically. And yes, the pattern paradigm does explain that in terms of the fact that when you want to set up a new pattern, well, where are you going to start? Well, you're going to start with another template from a different pattern, and you're going to apply that, and you're going to see how that fits, and then maybe just change a few parameters for that particular template, and then say, okay, well, look, that is the pattern that fits that data. So yes, there is very much a confirmation bias, and you get that all the time. It's inevitable.
Does this paradigm have anything to offer politically, or do you see it as being apolitical?
The pattern paradigm is basically just looking at how a single brain makes sense of the world. It's the first of a trilogy. I'm working on the second book, which will be about communication of ideas between people. The pattern paradigm is so unique and original that it's going to have an effect, a flow-on effect of understanding of other things in science, in philosophy, not just epistemology. It will have an effect on morality and perhaps politics or all these other things, and the way people communicate, because we are a sociological species. So yes, but it's not in the pattern paradigm. It's in the next book.
The next book.
That's right.
Thanks very much for talking to me today, Bruce, and I wish you all the best.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me here.